The year is 1944. The world is at war. And in the shadow of Montana's mountains, the Dutton family is about to face their greatest battle yet. What you're about to witness isn't just another chapter in the Yellowstone saga. This is the moment that forged everything. The moment that turned survivors into legends. The moment that decided whether the Dutton name would endure or be buried forever beneath the weight of a world on fire. After years of waiting, after countless rumors and whispers, the official trailer has finally arrived. And trust me when I say this, nothing could have prepared us for what Taylor Sheridan has unleashed. This is 1944. This is where it all begins to make sense. And this is going to change everything you thought you knew about the Duttons. The trailer opens with something we haven't seen in the Yellowstone universe before: complete and utter silence. No sweeping orchestral score. No dramatic voiceover. Just the sound of wind cutting across an endless Montana plain, and in the distance, smoke rising from chimneys that shouldn't be burning in summer. The camera pulls back slowly, revealing the Dutton Ranch, but it's different now. Darker. More isolated. The fences are worn. The buildings carry scars we've never seen before. This isn't the thriving empire we know from the original Yellowstone. This is something raw, something desperate, something barely clinging to survival. Then we hear it. A voice weathered by time and trauma. Brandon Sklenar's Spencer Dutton, but older now, harder, speaks with the kind of exhaustion that only comes from fighting too many battles for too many years. "My father built this place with blood," he says, and we see flashes of 1883, of James Dutton claiming this cursed land. "My uncle defended it with fury," and now we see glimpses of Jacob Dutton from 1923, his face twisted in rage as he protects what's his. "But me," Spencer's voice cracks slightly, and the camera finds his face, aged beyond his years, eyes hollow from things we can't yet understand. "I have to make sure there's still something left worth fighting for." The screen cuts to black, and when the image returns, we're watching a young man, barely 20 years old, standing at the edge of the ranch, staring out at the horizon with a mixture of fear and determination that's achingly familiar. This is John Dutton II, the son Spencer never got to raise properly. The boy who grew up hearing stories about a father who was more ghost than man. The father of the John Dutton we know from the original series. And in this moment, seeing him stand there with that same stubborn set to his jaw, that same refusal to back down that we've seen in every Dutton across every generation, the weight of legacy becomes almost unbearable. "The war took everything from everyone," Spencer continues, and now we see images that make the brutality of 1883 and 1923 look almost gentle by comparison. Men in uniform, some barely older than boys, saying goodbye to families who know they might never see them again. Women taking over ranch work that breaks their bodies and spirits. Children growing up too fast, their eyes already old. But out here, the war isn't just overseas. It's in every field we can't plant because there's no one left to work them. It's in every letter that arrives telling us another boy from town won't be coming home. It's in the eyes of every man who does come back, carrying pieces of how they can't ever put down. The music starts now, low and ominous, building with a tension that makes your chest tight. We see Spencer on horseback, riding hard across terrain that looks like it's trying to kill him, and behind him, riders are gaining ground. But these aren't the kind of enemies we've seen before. These aren't cattle thieves or rival ranchers. These are men with nothing left to lose, men who've seen what war does to the value of human life and decided that survival justifies anything. They think because the world is burning, the old rules don't apply anymore, Spencer growls, and we see him draw a weapon, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. They think they can take what isn't theirs just because there's no law left that can stop them. Cut to a scene inside the ranch house, and the atmosphere is suffocating. A group of men sits around a table, and their faces tell stories of impossible choices. One man, older, with medals on his chest that he wears like shame, pounds his fist on the wood. "You can't hold this land alone, Spencer. Not anymore. The war effort needs beef. The government needs your cattle. And if you don't give them up willingly, they'll take them anyway." Spencer stands at the head of the table, and the look in his eyes is pure Dutton defiance. "Let them try," he says quietly, and the room goes cold. This land has survived worse than bureaucrats and wartime requisitions. It'll survive this too. But then we see something that breaks through Spencer's armor. A woman's voice, soft but firm, cuts through the tension. "And what happens to your son while you're busy being a martyr?" The camera finds her, and even though we don't know her name yet, we can see she's someone who matters. Someone who's seen Spencer at his worst and still chose to stay. Someone who's fighting her own battle to keep this family from tearing itself apart. Spencer's face changes, just for a moment, and we see the crack in his foundation. The fear he won't admit. The knowledge that being a Dutton means sacrifice, and sometimes that sacrifice costs more than land or cattle. Sometimes it costs the people you love. The trailer shifts gears, and suddenly we're watching John Dutton II learning what it means to carry this name. He's in the barn, working alongside ranch hands who are twice his age, and they're not going easy on him. "Your father might be a legend," one of them says, voice thick with resentment. "But out here, you're just another pair of hands. And right now, you're not worth half what your last name promises." John's jaw clenches, and instead of arguing, he works harder, faster, until his hands bleed and his body shakes with exhaustion. And when he finally finishes, when he finally proves himself, there's no celebration. Just a curt nod and the unspoken understanding that tomorrow he'll have to prove it all over again. Being a Dutton isn't a privilege. Spencer's voice echoes over scenes of brutal ranch work, of fights that leave men broken, of decisions that have no right answers. It's a sentence. It's waking up every day knowing that hundreds of people depend on you, and if you fail, they don't just lose their jobs. They lose everything. We see Spencer making impossible choices, turning away families begging for help because the ranch can barely feed its own, selling off horses that have been with the family for generations just to make payroll, watching as pieces of the dream his father and Uncle built get chipped away by the relentless machinery of war and economics and time. Then the pace quickens, and the trailer becomes a barrage of images that are almost too much to process. Gunfire in the dark, men shouting orders that contradict each other, cattle stampeding through burning fields, Spencer fighting hand-to-hand with someone whose face we can't quite see, but whose intent is crystal clear. He wants Spencer dead, and he wants the Dutton ranch buried. John II watching his father nearly die, the terror in his young eyes mixing with something else, something harder, the understanding that this is his future too, that this violence and struggle and endless fight is what he's inherited. The music cuts out completely, and we're left with the sound of heavy breathing. Spencer Dutton stands alone in a field, and for the first time in the trailer, we see him vulnerable. Not wounded physically, but something deeper. Something that can't be bandaged or stitched. "I promised Alexandra I'd build something better," he whispers, and the pain in his voice is devastating. "I promised her our son would grow up in a world where he didn't have to fight for every breath, every meal, every inch of ground." The camera slowly reveals what he's looking at. A grave marker, weathered but maintained, flowers still fresh despite the harsh Montana climate. But some promises are impossible to keep. Not because you don't want to, but because the world won't let you. We flash to a memory, hazy and dreamlike, of Alexandra in her final moments. She's pale, weak, but her eyes are fierce as she grips Spencer's hand. "Promise me he'll know who he is," she gasps. "Promise me he'll understand why we fought so hard to get here." Spencer's younger face, still carrying hope despite everything they've endured, nods desperately. "I promise. I swear it." But then we're back in 1944, and the Spencer standing at that grave knows the weight of broken promises. Knows that his son looks at him like a stranger. Knows that the distance between them is measured not in feet, but in all the years Spencer spent trying to save the ranch instead of being a father. A new voice enters the trailer, younger but already carrying authority beyond its years. John Dutton II speaks for the first time, and there's an edge to his words that feels painfully familiar. "Everyone keeps telling me about the legacy, about what it means to be a Dutton, about the sacrifices that were made, so I could stand here. He's walking through the ranch, and his eyes take in everything with a critical gaze that's both appreciative and resentful. But no one talks about the cost. No one mentions that every acre of this land is soaked in blood. That every fence post marks another fight, another death, another piece of someone's soul traded for dirt and grass. We see John in town, and the looks he gets range from respect to fear to outright hatred. A shopkeeper won't meet his eyes when he makes a purchase. A group of men falls silent when he walks past. A young woman watches him with something between longing and pity. They see the name before they see me, John continues. And I don't know if I'll ever be more than that. More than just another Dutton, another link in a chain that feels more like a noose every single day. He stops outside a recruitment office, staring at the posters calling young men to serve, to fight, to prove themselves in a war that's supposedly noble and just. His hand reaches for the door, trembles there, and then falls away. Not out of cowardice, but out of something more complicated. The understanding that his war is here, and it's already started. Back at the ranch, tensions are reaching a breaking point. We see a meeting where government officials, backed by armed men, are making demands that aren't really requests. The War Food Administration has authority to requisition livestock as needed for the war effort, a stern-faced bureaucrat announces, his voice devoid of sympathy. Your ranch will provide 500 head of cattle by month's end, or we'll take them by force and compensate you at government rates. Spencer stands across from him, and the look on his face is one we've seen before on other Duttons. That moment right before violence becomes inevitable. Government rates, Spencer repeats slowly, dangerously. You mean pennies on the dollar while you sell them for triple to the military and pocket the difference. The bureaucrat's face hardens. That's seditious talk, Mr. Dutton. There's a war on. Sacrifices must be made. Spencer takes a step forward, and every man in the room tenses. My family has been making sacrifices since before you were born. We've bled for this land, died for it. And now you want to take it piece by piece, wrapped in a flag and called patriotism? The silence that follows is suffocating, broken only when Spencer's voice drops to barely above a whisper. Get off my land. Now. Before I make you. The officials leave, but their parting words carry the weight of prophecy. This isn't over, Dutton. Not by a long shot. The trailer shifts to show us the other battle Spencer is fighting, the one that might be even harder than defending the ranch from external threats. John II sits across from his father at dinner, and the distance between them feels like miles despite the small table. You're never here, John says flatly, not accusing, just stating a fact. Even when you're standing right in front of me, you're somewhere else. Fighting some battle that started before I was born and will probably still be going when I'm dead. Spencer's face shows the impact of those words, but he doesn't deny them. Can't deny them. The ranch, he starts, but John cuts him off. The ranch. Always the ranch. Tell me something, did you ever think about what I might want? Or am I just another asset to be managed, another piece of a legacy? Spencer's response is quiet but loaded with barely controlled emotion. Everything I've done has been for you. To make sure you have something. To make sure the sacrifices your mother made, the sacrifices your grandparents made, weren't for nothing. John stands abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a sound like a wound. I never asked for any of it. Never asked for the land or the legacy or the enemies that come with our name. All I ever wanted was a father. But I guess that's the one thing a Dutton can't afford to be. He walks out, leaving Spencer alone at the table, and the devastation on the older man's face tells us that his son's words hit harder than any bullet ever could. But there's no time to process, no time to heal family wounds, because the external threats are accelerating. We see a montage that's almost overwhelming in its intensity. Riders approaching the ranch at night, their intentions clearly hostile. Fences being cut, cattle being driven off in the darkness. A barn engulfed in flames while men scramble to save the horses inside, their screams mixing with the roar of fire. Spencer rallying what ranch hands remain, most of them too old or too young to be at war, arming them with whatever weapons they can find. They think we're vulnerable, he tells them, his voice carrying across the assembled group. They think because the strong men are overseas, we're easy pickings. They're about to learn what it really means to attack a Dutton. The violence that follows is brutal and unflinching. This isn't the romanticized Old West gunfights of earlier eras. This is desperate, close-quarters combat where survival matters more than honor. We see Spencer fighting with a ferocity that's almost frightening, every move efficient and lethal, the result of decades spent fighting for this land. But we also see the cost. Good men falling, blood staining the Montana soil that's already seen too much death. And through it all, John II watches, learning lessons about violence and necessity that no young man should have to learn. In the aftermath of the attack, as dawn breaks over a ranch that's been devastated but not destroyed, Spencer stands among the wreckage and makes a decision that we can see forming in his eyes. This ends now, he says to no one and everyone. I've spent my whole life reacting, defending, trying to hold on to what we have. But defense isn't enough anymore. If we're going to survive, if my son is going to have any kind of future, we need to stop fighting their war and start fighting ours. The determination in his voice is absolute, and it's clear that whatever comes next will be unlike anything the Yellowstone Universe has shown us before. We see Spencer gathering allies, calling in favors, making deals with people who exist in the moral gray areas that war creates. A former soldier who came back from Europe with skills that have no peacetime application. A business owner who lost everything to government seizures and wants revenge. A widow whose husband died protecting Dutton land and who now has nothing left to lose. These aren't noble heroes. They're survivors who've been pushed to their limits and beyond, and Spencer is welding them into something dangerous. Section 3. The trailer takes a darker turn as we're introduced to the true antagonist of 1944, and he's not what we expected. A man in an expensive suit stands in what appears to be a government office, but the way he carries himself suggests he's no mere bureaucrat. The Duttons think they're special, he says, his voice smooth and calculated, every word precisely chosen. They think their history, their bloodshed, their precious legacy puts them above the rules that govern everyone else. But history doesn't mean anything when the world is being remade. And right now, gentlemen, we have an opportunity to reshape Montana in ways that will echo for generations. He spreads a map across his desk, and we see the Dutton Ranch marked in red, surrounded by other properties, forming a picture of something much larger than simple cattle requisition. This is about power, about control, about erasing the old guard and replacing it with a new order built on wartime chaos. We cut to Spencer receiving intelligence about this man, learning that the attacks on the ranch weren't random violence, but coordinated strategy. His name is Garrett Hale. Someone tells Spencer, their voice tight with fear. Made his fortune during Prohibition, turned legitimate when Roosevelt came in, and now he's using the war to buy up land at fractions of what it's worth. Ranchers who can't meet government quotas, families who lose their sons overseas and can't keep up with the work. He swoops in like a vulture and takes everything. He's already acquired over 200,000 acres across Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. And your ranch, Spencer, it's the crown jewel. The one piece that would give him control over water rights, railroad access, everything he needs to build an empire that would make your family's holdings look like a hobby farm. Spencer's reaction is controlled fury. He can't just take it. There are laws, even during wartime. But the bitter laugh he gets in response tells him everything he needs to know. Hale writes the laws now. He's got senators in his pocket, judges on his payroll, and enough government connections to make anything he wants look legal and patriotic. You're not fighting a land grab, Spencer. You're fighting the entire system, and it's rigged against men like you. Men who think honor and history matter more than money and influence. The camera holds on Spencer's face as this information sinks in, and we see the moment when he realizes that everything his family built, everything they sacrificed for, could be erased not by violence or natural disaster, but by paperwork and political maneuvering. But Spencer Dutton isn't his father or his uncle. He's spent years fighting wars that couldn't be won with just bullets and bravery. He's learned to think differently, to adapt, to find advantages where none seem to exist. If Hale wants to play politics, Spencer says slowly, his mind clearly racing through possibilities, then we'll give him politics. But we'll do it the Montana way. What follows is a montage of Spencer doing something we've never seen a Dutton do before, building alliances not through intimidation or violence, but through strategy. He meets with other ranchers who are facing similar threats, men who've been too proud or too stubborn to admit they need help. Alone, we're all targets, Spencer tells them, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. Together, we're a coalition that represents thousands of votes, millions of acres, and an economic force that even Hale can't ignore. We see Spencer in a newspaper office, working with a journalist who's been investigating Hale's dealings. Documents spread across a desk reveal a pattern of corruption that's staggering in its scope. Bribes disguised as campaign contributions, government contracts awarded to shell companies Hale controls, properties seized under false pretenses and sold to his associates for pennies. This is enough to bury him, the journalist says, excitement building in his voice. If we publish this, if we get it to the right people, Hale's empire collapses. But Spencer's expression remains grim. Publishing it makes you a target. Makes everyone involved a target. Hale doesn't just destroy careers. He destroys lives. You need to be sure. The journalist's hand trembles slightly as he reaches for his pen, but his voice is steady. Some stories are too important to kill out of fear. This is one of them. Meanwhile, John II is forging his own path, and it's taking him in directions that both echo and diverge from his father's journey. We see him working alongside a Crow elder, learning about the land in ways that go deeper than ownership and property lines. Your family took this land, the elder says bluntly, no sugarcoating the historical truth. But taking and keeping are different things. The land doesn't care about your name or your legacy. It only responds to those who understand it, who respect it, who know that they're borrowing it from future generations, not owning it outright. John listens with an intensity that suggests he's hearing something his soul has been searching for, a different way of understanding the burden he's inherited. The elder takes John to places on the Dutton ranch that have been forgotten, sacred sites that John's grandfather and great-uncle either ignored or actively avoided out of superstition or disrespect. Your father fights to keep the land, the elder continues, gesturing to the vast expanse around them. But he doesn't really see it, doesn't hear what it's trying to tell him. The land is sick, John. Not from drought or disease, but from being treated as a possession instead of a relationship. If you want it to survive, if you want your children and their children to have anything worth inheriting, you need to change how your family thinks about what they're fighting for. These words plant seeds in John that will clearly grow into the philosophy we see in later generations, the complicated relationship with the land that defines the Duttons we know from the original Yellowstone. But there's no time for philosophical contemplation because the conflict with Hale is reaching its apex. We see a tense scene in what appears to be a state capitol building where Spencer and other ranchers confront Hale publicly, backed by the evidence they've gathered. Hale is smooth, unruffled, his smile never wavering even as accusations fly. Mr. Dutton, he says, his tone dripping with condescension, you're a relic of a dying age. Your grandfather came here and took this land by force from people who'd lived here for thousands of years, and now you stand here claiming moral superiority because someone's using legal means to do the same to you? The irony is almost poetic. Spencer's fist clenches, but he doesn't take the bait. The difference is I'm not pretending to be anything other than what I am. You hide behind flags and legal documents and pretend your theft is somehow noble. At least my family was honest about the violence. The confrontation escalates as evidence is presented. Documents showing Hale's manipulation of government programs, testimonies from families he's destroyed, financial records that prove his patriotic rhetoric is nothing but cover for profiteering. For a moment, it seems like justice might actually prevail, like the system might work the way it's supposed to. But then Hale plays his trump card. That's a compelling collection of documents, he says calmly, and if any of them were authentic, I'd be very concerned. Unfortunately, these appear to be forgeries, likely produced by Mr. Dutton and his associates in a desperate attempt to avoid losing their land through legitimate legal channels. I have experts ready to testify to their fraudulent nature, and I've already filed charges against everyone involved in this conspiracy. The room erupts in chaos, but through it all, Spencer remains eerily calm because he's been expecting this. He's learned that men like Hale always have contingencies, always have escape routes, always have enough power to corrupt even the most damning evidence. As security moves to escort him out, Spencer locks eyes with Hale across the room, and what passes between them is pure, undiluted understanding. This isn't over. It's not going to be settled in courtrooms or through newspaper exposés. It's going to be settled the old way, the Montana way, the Dutton way. And Hale, despite all his sophistication and political connections, seems to realize that he's made a critical error. He's cornered an animal that's far more dangerous than he calculated. We cut to nightfall at the Dutton Ranch, and the atmosphere is thick with anticipation. Spencer gathers his people, the strange coalition of ranchers, veterans, outcasts, and loyalists he's assembled. Hale thinks he's won, Spencer tells them, his voice carrying across the assembled group. He thinks the law is on his side, that his money and connections make him untouchable. And maybe he's right. Maybe we can't beat him in a courtroom or a state house. He pauses, letting that sink in. But this is Montana. And out here, there are older laws. Harder laws. Laws that don't care about bank accounts or political favors. Laws that say if you take from a man everything he's built, everything he's bled for, you better be ready for what comes next. The montage that follows is a masterclass in tension. We see preparations being made, not just for defense, but for an offensive that's clearly been planned down to the smallest detail. Weapons being cleaned and loaded. Horses being saddled in the pre-dawn darkness. Men saying goodbye to families with the understanding that some of them won't be coming back. And through it all, John II watches his father transform from the distant, burdened man he's known into something else entirely. Something primal and focused and absolutely terrifying in its intensity.